Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Patriots fall 27-17 to the Kansas City Chiefs at Gillette Stadium. They also fall to 3-11. And it's another week of decent defense, blips of competent offense, then mistakes. Really a back-breaking pick at the beginning of the second half from Bailey Zappe put the Chiefs in position to go up 14. And then there were penalties upon penalties that undid positive plays for the Patriots. Well, 5 of them, 3 of them were a little dicey. And it proved to be their undoing. Here's Bailey Zappe, though, speaking about the pick at the beginning of the second half and a Patriots team that managed just 10 first downs and barely more than 200 yards of offense against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Started out hot in the first half again, like we did the previous week. Came in here, had made adjustments, understood what we wanted to attack. Went out in the second half, threw an interception on the first play of the second half, which is terrible on my part. You take away that, you take away 7 points, it's a whole different game. They got the ball on whatever yard line it was, and 2 plays later they scored. So, that's on me. You take away that play, it's a different game. So
I think it's really important in the instance of Zappe, especially in the wake of Mac Jones. Before we get into so much of this game and really the particulars of what this game means in terms of going forward for this franchise, we'll also discuss the apparent benching of J.C. Jackson, the decisions by Bill Belichick to really retreat offensively and punt in critical situations, which for a 3-10 team with the game virtually out of reach were perplexing. But let's look at some of these numbers, because Bailey Zappe had an outstanding first half in which he was straight numbers, 17 for 19 for $141, 2 sacks. He had a touchdown pass, and it was a nice one. Managed the offense very well. Finished the game after that 17 for 19 start. He finished the game 23 for 31, 180 yards, 4 sacks, and the pick that I mentioned earlier. Offensively, they really couldn't run the ball, but I appreciated the fact that they didn't bother to try and run it and said, you know what, we're going to throw it today. They don't have Juju Smith-Schuster. They're obviously without Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas coming back from an injury. Tyquan Thornton was virtually non-existent in this game. He had 1 catch for 5 yards, but they banged the ball to Hunter Henry and Devontae Parker. They found and created screen opportunities for Ezekiel Elliott. Still, it's 180 yards of passing. So when you look at this team and the number of first downs and their ability on third down to move the chains, they end up finishing the day 2 for 12 on third down. And they're very good defense. The Patriots' very good defense finishes 5 for 13 on defense on third down. So many of those 5 were back-breaking, long yardage conversions that were made because of the excellence of Patrick Mahomes. We understand Mac Jones is not Patrick Mahomes, and Bailey Zappe certainly isn't that either. Nobody in the NFL is. But a great equalizer is the ability of whoever you are at quarterback to be able to move, to be able to buy some time, and to be able to throw with velocity. And currently, the Patriots don't have that on their roster. They don't have a big-armed quarterback who has physical tools that allow him to run around and make plays with a cannon arm. So, going forward, that's going to be something they need to address. We're going to get into that right now with Phil Perry. Here is the Senator now. Phil, when you look at Kansas City, they're certainly an absolute husk of what they used to be. But the Patriots have an expansion level offense. As the Patriots look to build going forward, do you agree that if you want to be able to compete, you got to find a way to get over 20 points on a regular basis? And you're going to need, while not Patrick Mahomes, somebody with more physical skills. And you might have to make the trade-off to be competitive of having that pre-snap savvy that you've always coveted and say, we'll develop that later. I need the arm and the legs.
It's a great point. And I talked to both Jalen Mills and Josh Uche about that tonight, and they acknowledge readily that this is where the game, not where the game is going, it's where the game is. They see these players every week. Not that everyone is Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously a different breed. His arm is so ridiculous that he can be moving fully to the right with his pelvis facing his own sideline and then cock his right arm behind his right ear and throw it at a 45-degree angle right towards the Patriots sideline somehow and pick up a first down, 20 yards, it felt like, whenever he wanted it. But that's the skill set that the league is moving toward. And it's because that's what's coming to them from the college game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And coaches are more open to working with those guys. So it's great to be able to diagnose and know what you're looking at pre-snap and make accurate throws. But if you can't make the first guy miss, because these defenses are so freaky athletic these days, especially in the front sevens, you're going to have a really, really hard time sustaining drives. Patrick Mahomes, it felt like, could pull a rabbit out of his hat whenever he wanted today. And that's what the best quarterbacks can do.
Yeah. I mean, they were 5 for 13 on third down. That's pretty good business by a team. Close to, lower than 40%. I don't know. I'm not a good math guy, but it's under 40% against Patrick Mahomes. But the 5 that he converted were nut crushers. I mean, Travis Kelce winds up with 5 catches for 28 yards. They have 20 carries for 43 yards. It's another good defensive game plan undone by the skill of one guy. How do you think the two coordinators did? Because again, I thought the Patriots game plan, and Bill O'Brien said, you know what, we're going to throw. We're not going to run. Why bother? I think the two coordinators, Bill O'Brien and Gerard Mayo / Steve Belichick, or Gerard Mayo. I know we credit Bill all the time for it, but I think the defense, but we all know by now, whether it's Brian Flores or Matt Patricia or Gerard Mayo, those are the architects. Even if Mayo doesn't have the title, it speaks well of these coordinators if they do wind up being the individuals who will be succeeding Bill, if that comes to pass as we expect it will.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they're both coordinators were limited today in certain ways, right? I mean, the offense has been limited all year in terms of its personnel. But man, outside of the first drive was a mess. 3 and out, horrible throw, I thought, on third down, leads to a punt. But that second drive, I've got Bailey Zappe down for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 good plays, 5 above average plays out of about a series of 7 snaps. I mean, he was in a rhythm, and that ended up leading to eventually a sack, a screen that went for not much, and a missed field goal. But you're right. I'm watching that drive and I'm saying, boy, Bill O'Brien's got this thing dialed, because, and I give Bailey Zappe credit too, because the ball was coming out quickly. It looked like he was decisive. It looked like the script, they're still probably in their opening script at that point, Tom. They were only 3 plays in to their game plan before that drive began. That looked like a good script to me. And that to me is a sign of a good coach. I don't think their problems offensively are Bill O'Brien. I think it's personnel. And good for Bailey Zappe on that drive. Good for him on the touchdown pass to Hunter Henry. That second half was gross. 39 yards passing.
And in discussing Bailey Zappe's ability to make decisions, it's as if he doesn't worry about the why. As Mac told us last year, he wants to know the why of things. I don't think Bailey Zappe has once wondered what the why is. He just, okay, that's what I'll do. So just point me in the right direction, and I'll throw it when my foot hits. Not to oversimplify, because I do think he makes some good reads, and he has impressed me more than I thought he would with some of the acumen and the decision making. But again, that when your team is what the Patriots are right now, which is again an expansion level offense, you throw a pick to start the second half when you're already down 7 and you're inside your own 40. So, good night.
Yeah, you can't overcome it. And again, 39 yards passing, a fumble, a pick, and a couple of sacks. And he talked about the sack that came from the corner on the corner blitz that ended up being a pretty big play, where he has to be able to sense it. He has to be able to use his cadence, see if he can draw them into making some movement that gives them away. But it did feel like he's taken ownership of some of these mistakes, and now it's 2 weeks in a row, bad halves. And I just wonder, big picture, Tom, maybe this is another conversation for another day. But, I'm listening to Scott Zolak on the broadcast during this game, and he's saying after that Hunter Henry touchdown, you've got a quarterback.
I know.
You've got a quarterback. And
he's like a weather vane, Zoe can be. You know what? Whatever's happening right then.
I get it in that moment. Hey,
he is a quarterback.
He is a quarterback. And I read that as, he didn't say starter. I read that as, why can't this guy be your number 2 next year? Maybe what we saw in the second half is a reason why you would hesitate in making that decision.
Yeah, and that's what we've restated a number of times. What can Bailey Zappe do with this opportunity? He can be a number 2. He can prove he can be the bridge for Drake May or Jaden Daniels or maybe Caleb Williams, whoever they get, because their draft status continues to be solidified. But he's not going to be the quarterback you build around.
Can I pause?
Sure.
You're comfortable with him being a bridge?
Only if he plays like he did in the first half.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean,
if he plays like he did in the first half of the Pittsburgh game, if he plays like he did in the first half of this game, fine. But if it's, he turns into a pumpkin after he has 4 Gatorades and takes a leak at halftime, can't have it.
And that's why I would be reticent to making that decision. I would rather have Jacoby Brissett at $8 million for 1 year. And that just means he can keep his hands on 10-2 and you're not giving the game away in the second half.
Yeah, because if we look at the totality of what Bailey Zappe has done this year, again, he's doing a nice job of enjoying the product for a while before I realized the inevitable pumpkin is going to show up. But you look at the relief appearances, and they've been shitty times to come into the game. We understand that, especially earlier in the year. The relief appearances this year were horrible. He had a great relief appearance against Green Bay, but that's what your backup does. You have to be ready to come in and just start throwing smoke. And I don't know if he is that kind of a player at this juncture. Give me a lot of prep, get me ready, get my ready to go, and I'll go out there and get him. And then the other team's going to do this and this. And what would he be better with better weapons? Would he be better with Juju out there or Jacoby Myers or Ramondre Stevenson? Would he have had a better game? It's all into excuse making and hypotheticals. And I think that we can hypothetical just a little bit with this game with the penalties that we saw from the beginning of the game with the Jalen Reagor kickoff return wiped out to the Hunter Henry touchdown, which was rightfully wiped out by a tremendous hold by Connor McDermott, to they got backed into a 1st and 25 on the Demario Douglas face mask, the Peppers fumble recovery. There were a lot of plays, fumble recovery coming after what the hell happened on that play? Oh, what was
that? That was an Alex Austin defensive hold, I think, that brought that one back.
Yes, which was, I thought it was a kind of a defensive hold. I thought there was some impeding going on. And, I think a lot of people would say, what happens on every play? Well, and sometimes they call it. It seemed too like Bill Belichick is becoming more prone to pointing out these ancillary issues that arise in the game that undo the Patriots. And buts, candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Here's Bill talking about the big plays in the game.
Well, there were a lot of big plays in the game. We got a couple turnovers, had one called back, had another touchdown called back. So there's a number of key plays in the game that could have helped us a little more than the way they turned out. But it's competitive. They're a good football team. They're well coached. Obviously, got a lot of good players. You can't give them any extra opportunities.
We understand the tenor around the team right now. And as Bill stands at the podium and explains if this had gone differently or if that had gone differently, and he's done that a number of times. If it wasn't for this, we had a good drive going. If it wasn't for that, we had a good drive going. Is that going to be the tenor of his defense, assuming he would like to mount one to remain as the head coach? Hey, we got some bad breaks here. It wasn't us.
I look at their discussion of the officials after the game today as a little bit unusual. Felt like a lot. It just felt like more than, even after a loss, even when there are critical calls that get made. You hear Jelani Tavai say it as one of the first guys up to the podium today, first defensive player up to the podium. And he's talking about Bill Belichick, and he appreciates Bill Belichick being in the officials' ears all game because they know that they were done in by a couple penalty calls. Now, I won't say, it's hard. Is it an excuse? Is it not? Is it just bringing up big plays in the game if you're a player or if you're Bill Belichick? I don't know, because Jelani Tavai at the same time didn't say we got screwed. The officials sucked tonight. But there is very clearly a league-wide complaint that is being submitted on a weekly basis by players and coaches alike about NFL officiating. And it feels a little opportunistic at the Patriots with Patrick Mahomes in town a week after he went ballistic on the officials, start saying, yeah, these officials, boy. You seen these officials?
The timing was bad on a lot of those flags. I mean, they're massive plays being wiped out. They must have had, I mean, they had a touchdown wiped out. They had a 50-yard punt return, a kickoff return wiped out. They had a turnover wiped out. And again, were there fouls? Yeah, it's almost like the Kadarius Toney thing. Where can you find the foul? Yeah, I could find the foul on the regular kickoff return, and there were two guys doing it. The one they called it on wasn't even the one I noticed on the replay, which was a full-on hold. But be that as it may,
do you think Bill's using this opportunity, Tom, as a way to explain away some of his team's faults to maybe
that's what I was kind of wondering.
Employers like others out across the league?
I think anyone that would listen, look, Bill's going to have a lot of sympathizers, and maybe he should, because he was 8-9 with a bad roster last year and a ridiculously appointed offensive coordinator. And they were 10-7 the year before, and they were 7-9 post Brady, and they did go to the playoffs before then. So if Bill says, hey, I had one bad year, I think there are a lot of people nationally who would say, when you look at the final result, they weren't that bad. Bill really got hosed here. And it takes looking and scrutinizing the totality of the decisions that got them here. But if Bill is able to change the conversation in a way that makes him look a little bit victimized by a trigger-happy owner and injuries and things that he couldn't control and were beyond his control, and he wants to keep coaching, then why not try and get ahead of it that way? I mean, for us in the local media who are chronicling these things, we've certainly had, to borrow a Lord of the Flies reference, we've had the conch for long enough. We've been making the point about all the, things that Bill has done that were lacking or the mistakes made. So if he's going to battle back in some way, do it at the podium. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, I call them totals, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Mass. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com, gambling helpline, mass.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. But before we get to the future of Bill and how this game does or does not change it, I want to ask you about your thoughts on the punts late in the game and Bill's responses to those. Here was Bill speaking about a decision to punt on fourth down early in the fourth.
You went for it early in the game, 4th and 2, and got the touchdown. Later in the game, early fourth quarter, was 4th and 3, kind of near midfield. You decided to punt. What went into that decision? Any thought to go for it there?
Yeah, before we got the interception.
Yeah, it was like, I think you're down by 17. It was 4th and 3.
Yeah, then we got the interception. Right. Well, felt like, at that point we'd lost 3 starters. Worried about the pass protection, worried about just what be able to execute in that situation. Felt like we were playing good defense and get the ball back on a turnover, or, 3 and out, get the ball in better field position.
So that's Bill answering that question. It seemed as if Bill confused which time that he failed to go on fourth down. We were referencing, here was Phil redirecting Bill to try and get a concrete answer to the one that Ben Volan from the Globe seemed to be referencing.
Bill, when Ben was asking about a fourth down decision, I think you thought it was fourth down from your own 33. There was another series previous to that. It was the first set of plays you guys had in the fourth quarter. Same decision making for you in terms of the injuries and not wanting to go for it. There's 4th and 3 is at your own 42.
Yeah, it's not a question of not wanting to go for it. It's a question of doing what you feel like is best at that point in time.
Was that related to the injuries, though, like you mentioned for the previous situation?
There's a lot of things that go into a decision. I mean, it's not one thing.
Was there anything odd about the beginning of his answer when he was talking to Volin that you noticed?
It was the one that we followed with a pick, essentially. Like, the response there was, well, that's why you punt, Ben, is because you could maybe get a turnover and have great field position and then score a touchdown. It was, he wasn't saying they planned it that way, but that was sort of the intimation it felt like on that one.
Yeah, it was like, get the offense off the field so we can shorten the field with our defense.
And try to
I
get
get the concept, but it's just such it's like a Madden game where, you've lost all your quarterbacks, so you decided to start Gus Frerotte or something. I go back a little bit on my Madden.
Wow. Yeah. No, yeah. You're trying to challenge yourself. Well, let's see if I can win this game without scoring on offense. What if I could just score on defense? And Tom, Patriots defenders openly talk about how they try to get in the end zone every single week in a way that I have not heard other teams do so, because they know they're limited on that side of the ball. And if they want to win these games, they probably have to score defensively, and they're not wrong. So I did find that interesting. I also found it interesting, though, Tom, we did sort of eventually get a real explanation. Again, is it reality? Is it an excuse? We could debate that, but a real explanation as to why they're punting. And he's basically talking about, well, we had injuries. We lost 3 starters. We didn't feel good about our pass protection. Again, that feels like a change in course from old Bill Belichick. We don't typically get that detailed on things like fourth down decisions from him.
So let's get out of the conversation about what this, might mean for Bill Belichick going forward. We've reported a decision was made. We reported that earlier in the week. Ian Rappaport from NFL Media reported Saturday night that there's no, quote, firm decision. So that actually leads me to believe that there's a decision, if he's going to distinguish between firm and not firm, that they're disposed in one particular way. And, the notion that there is a leaning, at the very least, was bolstered by Rapp himself when he details the things that Bill would have to do to actually change minds over the final 4 games. Is there a hypothetical by which Bill Belichick could somehow change the equation? I acknowledge that during the week, because you never know until the man is walking out the door and he doesn't work here anymore. And they always reserve the right as Bill Belichick to change their mind. But he was down, as I said, 28-3 going into this game. Did this game do anything to change hearts and minds in your view, Phil?
I'm not sure why it would. Again, penalties that chalk that up to sloppiness, in my opinion. Do you in to a large degree? You have a couple of pretty good drives offensively, and that's about it. Special teams mistakes, again, are an issue for you.
Hook field goal attempt
on a weekly basis. And so these have been the problems that they have dealt with for a long period of time now. And it continues to surprise me, no matter who you're reading, when people say that Bill Belichick is at the top of his game. It's just, the evidence would suggest otherwise. I'm not saying he still can't win games as a coach, and it might not look a lot different if his roster looks much differently, but there are issues that go beyond the quarterback position on this team. And if you want to just point to Mac Jones or point to Bailey Zappe and say, if we just get somebody else in here, Bill Belichick could get this thing turned around, because he's still a great coach. He might still be. It's just, again, there's a lot of evidence pointing in the direction of that the arrow on Bill Belichick is now pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
as a head coach.
Like, how we can have no debate that Bill Belichick knows how to X and O as well as anybody in the league. But why are players committing penalties? Are they not good enough to win without holding? Are they not good enough to pivot without grabbing and cover a receiver? Are they not good enough to separate? And are they not good enough because they're not talented enough, which would visit upon the decision to hire that player in the first place? Are they not good enough because they haven't been coached well enough to understand the techniques necessary to achieve that? All of these things eventually come back to where the buck stops, and that's with Bill. So that to me is okay. So we understand that the limitations are being caused by the players themselves. Bill's a good X and O coach, but part of being a coach is putting a staff in place and having your guys ready to go and well disciplined. So I guess the question is, do you believe that moving on from Bill Belichick, you'll have a better coaching staff in place? The players will be better trained. They'll be more receptive, and you'll build a better roster in which guys are more situationally fine. I mean, Jelani Tavai, as unbelievable as he's been all season, you don't pitch the ball backwards after an interception, son.
Again, they feel like they got to score on that side of the ball. You know, that's basically what he said after the game. We've been talking a lot about trying to score, trying to put it in the end zone. Marte Mapu, same thing. He gets a pick, not good enough, trying to get in the end zone. And that's just where they're at. It just feels like they're stressed in so many different areas because they've left themselves thin or unprepared or both. There's an interesting little microcosm maybe of what we're talking about right now, Tom, that has been ailing the Patriots at the cornerback position today, where J.C. Jackson, who you had to hire because you were so thin at the position, started with injuries, so that's not your fault, but you're pretty thin at that spot. You don't feel like you have outside corner depth. You have to bring in a guy who's been an issue other places. He comes here, he's an issue here. He's slated to start today. He's on the active roster. Something happens between 90 minutes before the game when the inactives are announced and the start of the game itself where he can't play. And Bill Belichick says he's not available.
Here's Bill on J.C. Jackson from the press conference after the game.
Bill, was J.C. Jackson available today?
No.
And what happened that he was active for the game but wasn't available?
He wasn't available.
So then why was he active for the game?
He wasn't available. Just leave it at that.
And so we don't know what happened with J.C. Jackson. Is he sick? Did something happen in the locker room? You know, he cut his hand, putting some tape on. Who knows, right? But now it forces Alex Austin into the game. And we just mentioned him earlier. He was in the middle of one of these big plays. He has a penalty that goes against him that wipes a forced fumble and fumble recovery off the board, and it changes the game. And maybe that happens if J.C. Jackson is available to them. But Alex Austin, it's not ideal that you have him out there playing the number of snaps that you have him out there for.
And going back to corner, when we talk about that, I think that fans could rightly say, well, Christian Gonzalez is hurt. He is. But as Devin McCourty mentioned to us at the start of the season, the Patriots only had one outside corner on the team prior to drafting Christian Gonzalez. That was Jack Jones, the wonderfully gifted, but walking headache Jack Jones, and Christian Gonzalez. So those are your outside corners. And when Jack Jones is no longer useful and Christian Gonzalez is hurt and Jalen Mills is basically a safety, you've got to figure something out because it wasn't staffed well enough as running back or wide receiver or tight end or right and left tackle weren't well enough staffed. So with that, let's ship you out. You go do your TV hit. I'm going to get ready to do my column. We'll both have our coverage up on NBCSportsBoston.com. And you can find our podcast on YouTube. So Phil, you're out. See you.
Bye.
I'm out too. Bye.